Good evening, everyone. This meeting of the Coventry Town Council will now come to order at 6:01 p.m. Roll call. Ms. Ludwig.
Here.
Mrs. Lima.
Here.
Mrs. Shockley.
Here.
Mr. LeBlanc. Mrs. Dixon. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mrs. Shockley will lead us in the pledge and describe the emergency evacuation plan.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated.
You can leave either of these two exits and go either to your left or your right.
Members of the council are very sad with the passing of James Spearman, and I would just like to read a little bit about him that was in his obituary, just as a way for us to all remember the contributions that he made to the community and to his family. The members of the council will pause for a moment of silence as we remember James Joseph Spearman, our town sergeant, and a loyal supporter and member of the community. Mr. Spearman passed away Thursday, April 21st, 2022. He served on the Coventry Town Council for 18 years and was past vice president. He was an enthusiastic coach and president of the Coventry Babe Ruth Baseball League for 47 years. He also established and coached in the Central Coventry Little League, and he founded the Coventry Basketball Association. He was also a Cub Scout master. The council offers our sincere regrets to his family, his wife Audrey, his children Colleen, James, and Michael, his 6 grandchildren, and they all have lost a family member and a wonderful community member. A mass of Christian burial will be held from St. John and Paul Church tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. Next agenda, Coventry Public Schools Committee Report for March. Mr. James Pearson will read the report. Mr. Pearson.
Thank you for having us. So I have the school committee monthly report to the Coventry Town Council for today, April 25th. 4 major items I'd like to cover in this report. The first one being is that during a Rhode Island Skills USA event this year, there were 84 Coventry students competing in 23 separate events. And on March 30th, at the award ceremony for Skills USA for Rhode Island, in Providence, students from Coventry won a total of 28 medals in 15 different competitions. There were 11 gold, 11 silver, and 6 bronze medals. And additionally, criminal justice instructor and Coventry's Skills USA advisor, Mr. Earl Reed, was recognized as the Rhode Island Skills USA Instructor of the Year. So congratulations to the students and to Mr. Reed. Second item is about our Special Olympics recognition. About 2 years ago, Coventry High School was notified that it is being recognized as a national champion school by the U.S. Special Olympics. Only 5 schools nationwide receive this recognition each year, and only one other high school in Rhode Island has received this recognition. On Friday, April 1st, the celebration finally took place. Because of COVID, it was delayed. Over 1,800 individuals attended, including representation from the elementary and middle school unified programs. Governor Dan McKee and Rhode Island Special Olympics CEO Dennis DeJesus spoke at the event. And the highlight was a speech from Unified Ochre alumnus Cole Campbell, who spoke from his heart and told those in attendance what the unified movement meant to him as a young adult. Deep and sincere thank you goes out to Mrs. Christine Hawkins, the Unified Ochre advisor, who had the idea of creating this movement 4 years ago. Also, thank you to all of the high school students and staff who supported this incredible celebration. Thank you to U.S. Special Olympics and Rhode Island Special Olympics for this incredible recognition and designation. Another special thank you to Hasbro Corporation, who sponsored this event financially and also provided a toy to every student in attendance. And finally, thank you to Coventry High School graduate Amanda Hoskins for running the celebration, including videography from behind the scenes. The next item I'd like to cover is about the race for the Rhode Island Teacher of the Year. We are proud to recognize that Coventry High School's Math Department Curriculum Coordinator and current Coventry High School Teacher of the Year, Mr. Chuck Brancho, has been identified as one of the 3 finalists for Rhode Island Teacher of the Year. Mr. Brancho will be working with Coventry's former Teachers of the Year and administration to revise the district's Teacher of the Year process. We will also recognize all Coventry High School students from the class of 2022 who plan on pursuing a career in education or an education-related field. The pinning ceremony for these students will be held during the May 19th school committee meeting. And finally, some sports news, which is a favorite of many in the community. Congratulations goes out to Coventry High School's Leangie Calderon, who won the Rhode Island Interscholastic League Winter Championship in the weight throw. Another congratulations to the Coventry Moses Brown Smithfield girls hockey team for winning the state championship. And congratulations to our Coventry High School competition cheer team for winning the state title now 3 years in a row. And that's it for the school committee monthly report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pearson. We'll now move to Agenda C, public hearing. Members of the council may have a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call. Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon, yes. 4 yeas, no nays, the motion passes. The council welcomes the members of the Coventry School Committee, the leadership team. We extend a warm welcome to the members of the public, members of the school committee, our town manager, Mr. Marchand, our finance director, Ms. Mills, our superintendent of schools, Mr. Levis, assistant superintendent, Mr. Cowett, director of curriculum, Ms. Angelone, the chairperson of the school committee, Kathy Patno, and school committee members, Mr. Pearson, Mr. Florio, and Ms. Kalunian. We also welcome Harold Sands, our Coventry Public Schools Finance Director, and Mr. Chris DeVerna, Deputy Finance Director. So welcome to all of you. And also welcome to the members of the public. We're happy to see you here this evening. This is a public hearing for discussion and/or action. The town manager presented his recommended budget on Monday, April 4th. It was that budget that was presented in the announcement for the public hearing to take place April 25th, that's this evening, and on Saturday, April 30th. Yes, we are having 2 public hearings on this budget tonight and on Saturday. As a result of the recommendation, the council had a joint meeting with the school committee on April 11th, 2022, to discuss the areas of agreement and disagreement with the recommendation. The municipal and school sides were asked to submit changes to the recommendation by Friday, April 22nd, to the town manager. The town manager this evening will present the budget recommended based on April 4th and his revised options based on the feedback that he received. He received feedback from both the school and from each of the 5 council members. Mr. Marchand received a recommendation from Mr. Sands and from each of the council members, as I just mentioned. Mr. Marchand this evening will present a comparison between what was recommended on April 4th and what he is recommending based on the feedback. Members of the council and the school committee may ask clarifying questions and make some comments. However, the focus this evening is on public comment relating to the budget. I'd also mention that the public hearing is on the budget, but we also do have public comment later in the evening by which members of the public may ask or make comment on any topic, not only what is on the agenda this evening, but any other comment that they would like to make. When we enter the public hearing, members of the public, please raise your hand, be recognized, and come to the podium. State your name and address and make your comment. And those on Zoom, please raise your hand on the chat function, be recognized by the IT administrator who will let you in. And then we'll also ask for additional questions by members of the council. So I'd like to start the public hearing with a presentation by Mr. Marchand.
We don't have to open?
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to ask you to open. Just a moment.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to open our meeting, the school committee's meeting at 6:11. Dave Florio,
Yes.
just say present. Mrs. Kalunian,
Yes.
Mr. Pearson,
Yes.
Mr. Levis, Mr. Cowett, Mr. Sands, and Mrs. Patno here. Thank you.
Thank you. I just gave that rousing welcome
I
to
know you
all of
did.
you.
I know you
How
did.
could I forget you're here? You're all up here. Forgive me. Okay, we're now officially open. Mr. Marchant.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight, I will be presenting the more or less the same presentation that I presented on the 4th for the benefit of the public and anyone who missed it. And that is because it is also consistent with the advertisement for this meeting and the budget that was published in the paper 3 weeks ago. At the end of my presentation, I do have a couple of new slides that will reflect the input that I received towards an alternative to this budget proposal. This budget is can be themed as a commitment to quality community services. It's not advancing. There we go. Okay. We began this budget with a number of goals from last year, and a number of those goals we have been able to complete, including the implementation of a fleet management plan, conducting a performance audit, creating a new comprehensive plan, which is underway, and creating a new strategic plan, which was adopted by the town council in January. Other goals we have remaining is to complete a community survey, invest in infrastructure, invest in technology, vehicles, and equipment, and in our facilities. The top goal of the strategic plan, the top priority, was to improve the financial strength and position of the town. This budget achieves this through funding the state-mandated investment in school maintenance of 3% of the school's operating budget, funding the town's capital improvements plan. This did get revised upwards to $955,000, and I'll show that on a later slide, and funding the town's operating contingency, which also went up slightly. Utilization of ARPA funds to address unbudgeted capital investments. In the performance audit, the Coventry Public Schools and all town departments received an audit of their operations, which reviewed the policies, practices, staffing, and general workloads. The preliminary findings presented more than 60 recommendations for improving operations, optimizing performance, and delivering effective municipal and educational services. We do expect to have the final report presented to the town council next Monday on May 2nd. The capital improvements portion of the town budget has the following items. These items are subject to substitution. These were what had been preliminary planned. There was some input from council about investing in other things first, which can remain, but we have the budget figure to do what we need to do. This includes the vehicle underbody wash rack, sidewalks and street repairs, vehicles for the police department, fuel system upgrades for public works, and that services all fleets for police and public works and other vehicles. Property maintenance for parks and recreation, dealing with grounds and parking lots and structures, and facilities maintenance, dealing with buildings operations. A brush chipper for public works. We have, for information technology, a new town website to improve interaction, searchability, public engagement, and ease of finding information. Hopefully we can even upgrade that to more of self-serve options for residents. The DEF station is a system that will service our diesel vehicles more efficiently. We have a fence we need to put up per DEM at the Millworks property and some recreation equipment. The school has a number of upgrades that they have planned in their capital budget, including replacing the well in Western Coventry, replacing the roof at Feinstein Middle School, replacing exterior doors at these 3 elementary schools, $600,000 worth of paving projects, electrical upgrades throughout the school facilities, gym floor replacements at the high school and middle school, school intercom systems, ceiling tile replacement, a new retaining wall or a maintenance of the retaining wall at the middle school, fire alarm upgrades, and door replacement and hardware to meet ADA compliance. Continuing is a list of items I'm not going to read because they didn't make it in the budget, but they are really just a reminder that there are a lot more things that the town should be investing in than we can budget for. And so we do need to plan ahead for our future capital needs. And this goes for all departments, including the school. I do want to just touch on the American Recovery Plan Act. The town will be receiving ultimately a total of $10,407,637. We have received half of that funding already. The other half we have not yet received. We might receive it before the end of this fiscal year. Otherwise, it'll be in 2023. And hopefully we get to see it all. And we do have this on our agenda tonight to discuss it in more detail with the council. Our budget objectives this year for 2023 was to establish capital improvement plan funding. We have a lot of capital needs, but in prior years, very little funds were allocated to make those improvements. And this budget takes a big step towards putting money towards these capital projects. This budget also restores funding to parks and recreation to pre-pandemic levels. We did keep the tax levy growth below 3%. We have a commitment to fund the state's minimum maintenance requirement for schools. And we seek to maintain quality services in all departments, as well as increasing the funding to our contingency, which we found ourselves a bit short on this year. So the budget target is to be accurate, stable, sustainable, equitable, and meet our targets because our budget is an asset. Our budget highlights, excuse me. We have made some changes in town staffing per the strategic plan and performance audit recommendations. This doesn't incorporate all the recommendations, but we're beginning to make some headway on some of these. Parks and Recreation, we're restoring recreation program coordinator and a recreation program supervisor and an event coordinator. We are actively working to recruit a deputy finance director. And I'm happy to announce that we have selected an assistant town manager and he has accepted. His name is Brian Wood, and he is the assistant city manager of Auburn, Maine. And I'm waiting to hear on a start date. He's giving notice and making plans to move his family here. But we're very happy about that. The additional staff support for human resources, IT, and the town clerk are in the form of either interns or part-time temporary help. But this was to respond to the peaks of workflow rather than full-time, permanent, part-time, or full-time positions. The CIP, these numbers did get updated. For the town is $955,354, and for the school, $2,278,583. The municipally funded share of this would be $110,372, according to the alternative A that I'll be presenting at the end. Overall, the revenue across all revenue streams is up 2.3%. The overall budget on expenses is up 2.3%. However, this reflects a 2.75% increase to the property tax levy. The motor vehicle tax has been a very difficult revenue to manage because state law says you cannot tax a vehicle more this year than what you taxed them last year. but the Kelly Blue Book value of all used vehicles has shot up so much that we don't have a tax rate to apply to these higher value vehicles that comes in less than what we taxed them last year. So the state's still working on that, and we hope to have a better number. And we can't just level fund that because people buy and sell vehicles. There might be fewer cars this year than last year, or more cars than last year in Coventry. So we have 47,000 cars that we receive revenue from on this line item. State aid, excuse me, school funding increased by only 4,700 compared to the 600,000 increase we saw previously. And school revenue is projected to be down 919,000 or 3.4%. That number may have also adjusted and changed based on some of the assumptions, but we are looking at some adverse conditions for budgeting this year. There's been high inflation and market volatility, and we're trying to keep this budget as manageable and conservative as we can while aspiring to achieve some of these long-term goals, like investment in capital that will do really well for the town in the long term. We know that with capital investments like property, the prices only tend to go up, and it was never cheaper to buy it than it was yesterday. So I think we're doing really good. So overall, the revenues look like this. For property tax, it's going up 2.75% to 76,307,486. The motor vehicle is still tentative at 3.5 million, or almost 11%. Other property taxes, this is property tax receipts from prior years and other sources. The state aid, this encompasses all state aid, not just school state aid, for the various town programs and school and everything. It's up 11%. General government, these are fines and fees and assessments and various things. We're seeing an increase, a substantial increase of 29%. That largely came from building permits. It's a really hot time to build houses because of housing prices. And so we're seeing a lot of activity in these areas. Other departments are up 7%. The state appropriation, again, is flat and for schools, and the school's miscellaneous income is down almost 36%, just based on these are grants and certain programs that are dedicated funding. But overall, we're looking at a 2.37% increase of revenues over last year. On the expenditure side, we have modest increases in police and public works. It shows the corresponding percentage of the overall budget that these departments represent. The big jump is in parks and recreation, because we're adding those positions to restaff and rebuild the program that existed prior to the pandemic. General administration is up 12%, library 6.5%, human services 4.2%. Planning and development is actually down because we reallocated some of those resources, and then the school operations is up slightly, and a slight decrease in the total capital, pension, debt, and contingency. So that's how we are keeping at the 2.37% overall increase. Here's a pie chart that shows really the town's operations. On the municipal side is about 32% of the budget, and on the school side, 67% of the budget. This is the budget summary that was advertised in the paper and on the website. And we have a balanced budget that reflects investments and contingency and capital investments, 955,354. We have, on the expenditure side, we're only showing 110,372 for school capital, but I'll show you how we're making that up, because much of the rest of that is either already in the school operations budget and split between ESSER and ARPA funds. So that is the budget that I presented earlier this month on the 4th, and with just a couple of minor tweaks and changes with updates. But I do have, the input I received was generally looking for ways to better meet the school's operating needs. The school presented a revised request that was a reduction of 400,000 from their previous request. And they're asking for a 2.86% increase instead of 3.76%. And overall, we're able to achieve that through the use of these one-time grant revenues from ESSER and ARPA. And this is the way it works. From my previous recommendation, I had proposed a 0.43% increase to the school operating budget, and we've been able to increase that to 2.86%. The school minimum maintenance requirement, which we're calling CIP, went down slightly based on the numbers that the school provided me, but we're going to hit this $2.278 million target in the following manner without changing the town's allocation of CIP. So this is done. The bottom table is a breakdown of how the CIP minimum maintenance requirement would be met. The school has budgeted $715,000 for trade personnel, $285,000 for building repairs and maintenance. That's the first $1 million. What the town had allocated for CIP is being broken into 3 categories: $400,000 for ESSER, $110,372 for the appropriation, and $768,211 would be coming from the town's ARPA revenues to be spent on school maintenance requirements, capital needs. And by using ESSER funds and ARPA funds, we're going to take those same amounts that we had budgeted with tax dollars, and we're putting those in the appropriation. I'm trying to go, I'll go slow and I'll say it again. We are substituting what we're taking from the tax dollars into the CIP and moving those funds into the school operations budget and replacing the CIP with ESSER and ARPA funds. And that way, we're able to do 100% of our minimum maintenance requirement, and we're able to fund the school's operating request of a 2.86% increase without changing the town side of the budget either, and without raising the levy rate from 2.75%. So bringing up the summary slide, this is what the difference looks like. In summary, we're increasing the school's expenditures by the same amount or close to the same amount. We're decreasing the capital. And the difference is because the ESSER funds and the ARPA funds are already held by the school and the town, they are not part of our general fund budget in the budget proposal. So it'll be incumbent on the school committee to expend their $400,000 of ESSER funds on maintenance. And it would be incumbent on the town council, if this is the direction they choose to go, to commit that funding of $768,211 from ARPA money to school capital improvements. And that is the sum total of the input all worked together to meet the general needs. I did have a number of comments from individuals that were varied and just by themselves didn't really fit into the context. And so I didn't feel the need to include them. But certainly it will be the town council's prerogative after the public hearings to decide any other changes that they would like to see made. Beyond this budget, we are looking to the future to prepare a facilities improvement plan and look at all buildings for both the schools and the town. We'd like to review the asset allocations and tax structure as it pertains to funds allocated to the land trust and the tax exemptions and the town ordinances. And we'd like to develop alternative revenue sources so that we can be less reliant on taxes and have perhaps more recreation program services, fees for service, and grants. And that is the end of my presentation. And I will leave it to the council to conduct the public hearing and take questions.
Okay, could we put back the slide? That's the summary slide, Mr. Horton?
This one?
The other one?
This one?
Yes, that one. All right. Before I open the public hearing, we've opened it, but asked for public comments. I just want to know if there's any member of the council or school committee who would like ask a quick clarifying question or make a comment, but the focus will be on public comment. So is there anyone from the school side who would like to make a public comment? Or ask a clarifying question about this budget alternative A?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, anyone from the town side? Mrs. Lima?
So what's the amount that's quote unquote budgeted left in CIP for the town side? Can you just clarify that for me?
Yeah, the town's CIP remains at $955,354.
Okay. And then the rest is presumed to be backfilled with ARPA.
For the school, yes.
Okay. Wait.
So if you look at the top table, under the school's proposed budget of $50,023,936, that's their appropriation from the town for operations. The next line is the amount of is 3% of their overall budget. That's their minimum maintenance requirement for capital. And that is separate from the municipal capital improvements of $955,000. So if you combine them, the town's overall investment in capital would be 3.1 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're treating the municipal side separate from the school side. And this entire alternative revolves around moving what I had proposed to budget for the school's minimum maintenance requirement, CIP, from that into their appropriation for operations. And then we're backfilling what I took out of their CIP with ESSER and ARPA funds.
Okay. So it's kind of 6 and 1/2 dozen the other.
Yes. The main policy difference is that by taking those tax dollars, if you will, the town's budgeted funds out of capital for the schools.
You haven't built that in for the next year.
You don't have it built in long term.
Yeah.
And so in order to build up a capital fund for the schools, it's going to be a mountain to climb in the future.
Okay. But the list that you did show for capital improvement, whatever we decide on those items, that full list can still happen based on this scenario.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions that any member of the school committee or the town council would like to ask? All right, I'd like to open up to public hearing. Members of the public, please raise your hand, be recognized, and come to the podium, state your name and address, and make your comment. Remember The public hearing is on the budget. If you are here to make public comment on any other subject other than the budget, we will have time for that at the end of our meeting. Any questions on the budget? Yes, please.
Denise Brown, 23 Linwood Drive, Coventry. Before the vote in May, will we have a budget broken down line by line?
Mr. Marchand can respond to that. We have seen a budget broken down when we've
We
had.
haven't.
Mr. Marchand?
A line item budget of the proposal from earlier this month was posted this morning on the town website, and it is open for public
It
review.
must have been after I checked. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Other questions on the budget?
Point of information, Madam
Yeah.
President. I don't know if we want to also let the public know, given the fact that the budget was posted just today and it's a big document, that there's also the opportunity on Saturday to have the same discussion. So if people want to take the time to look at the budget that was just posted today and give comment on Saturday or email any of their counselors or school committee members, I think that would be appropriate as well.
Thank you. I did mention that we are having a second hearing on a Saturday. That was specifically requested that we have a Saturday meeting so that those people who are unable to come to a weeknight meeting would be able to still voice their opinion. And as mentioned, anyone is also able to send any message to the town manager or to any member of the school committee or to the member of the town council. Any other questions about the budget? Okay. Any member on Zoom who would like to ask a question about the budget? Okay. Mrs. Patna, would you please close your meeting? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adjourn.
I second the motion.
Thank you. What time is it? 6:39?
At 6:30.
That's 6:39. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Madam President. Guess we can sit down?
Yes, if you'd like to remain here, feel free to do so. Otherwise, you can take a seat in the audience, whatever is comfortable for you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam President.
you're welcome.
Madam President, if there's no other public comment, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
I'm getting you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, I was going to ask for a motion to close public hearing. We have a motion, we have a second. Okay, roll call, Ms. Ludwig,
Yes.
Mrs. Lima,
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley,
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon, yes. 4 yeas, no nays. The public hearing is now closed. We're now at agenda item number D, consent agenda for discussion and/or action, discussion on the matter of the use of COVID funds, American Rescue Plan Act. Mr. Marchand, would you please make a presentation? I believe you've submitted a transparency report today, and perhaps you can review what has been sent out today to the members of the council.
So I can give an update on the transparency report that the town has submitted to the U.S. Department of Treasury regarding the use and planned use of ARPA funds. I don't have a presentation prepared for tonight per se, but I did send an email out to the council with a previous slide book and other materials that we've shared in the past for your reference. To date, the town received an allotment in July of 2021 of $1,822,227.19. Of those funds, the town has planned or passed resolutions to utilize $130,000 for the purpose of a performance audit of the town and Coventry Public Schools by the Matrix Consulting Group, LLC. The town council has allocated $117,000 for the payment of 70% of the cost to replace a roll-off sanitation truck that was unexpectedly destroyed in an accident. And the town council also appropriated $157,840 for the purpose of developing a comprehensive community plan with the Beta Consulting Group. No other funds have been committed from the ARPA revenues. And in August 2021, we received an additional allotment of $3
Excuse me,
million.
I'm sorry. I please ask for no conversations while we have conversation going on. Thank you.
The August 2021 disbursement of $3,381,591.28. We anticipate receiving an additional $5,203,818.48 as yet date unknown. That's the same. So we do have presently nearly $5 million available to commit, and another $5 million coming at a later date. And it is up to the town council to decide how those funds can be utilized. In our filing with the U.S. Treasury, we did opt to or elect to have the first 10 million of our 10.4 million be considered revenue replacement, which allows the town a great deal of latitude about how to use those funds. However, the restrictions remain in place that it cannot be used for debt service or funding pensions. It can, the best use is for things of a capital nature and anything to do with water, stormwater, water operations or sewer, and general government operations.
Okay. And just for members of the public, we'll repeat some of the things that we mentioned before. There are restrictions on how we can use these funds. It provides COVID-19 recovery funding and includes the following broad areas of how funds may be utilized. 1, to make necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband structure. 2, to address negative economic impacts caused by COVID-19, including assistance to households, small businesses, nonprofits, and impacted industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality. 3, for the provision of government services to the extent of reduction in revenue due to the COVID-19 public health emergency. And 4, to respond to workers performing essential work during the COVID-19 public health emergency. Members of the council, any suggestions for how we might be able to use the funds? Mrs. Lima?
Thank you. My first question is, I noticed in our capital improvement planning and the priorities we put to be actually budgeted, we put the vehicle underbody wash rack, but it's priority number 14 in one of the documents you gave us. So just curious.
So I got that priority list on Friday.
Oh, okay.
And so it's updated from the slide book I did several weeks ago, and
Okay.
I didn't update that slide.
All right. The other comment I just wanted to make too was, while it might be a small sample size, I feel like to some extent we need to take into account, and Mr. Marchant reshared today the survey results on ARPA funding. And number 1 was infrastructure in terms of quality of roads and sidewalks. So I believe we should have certain weight. I personally am also a big believer and supporter of Parks and Recreation. I think it's a shame that we really don't have any playgrounds in this town for kids to safely play outside. So I definitely would like to find a way to move that up the priority list. I personally live near a basketball court that gets used every single day, but is riddled with cracks. So I know that that's also a priority, but overall, I'm hoping we can find a way and make Parks and Recreation a priority for the youth and those who enjoy recreation. But I would like to hear more from, I'm sorry, hold on, I had it up. Here it is. On some of the items from DPW on their list, just to learn a little bit more. Like the term sanitation alternative, I'm not sure I know what that means. And then understanding why we might want to still include some of these projects on the list if they're going forward for DEM, Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank funding. And then also, I was under the impression the brush chipper was in really bad shape and we need that for our yard waste operation, but it's fairly low on the priority list. So I just wanted some clarification on those as well.
Okay, I'm happy to speak to those.
Okay.
I'll kind of work backwards. The priority list is a little loose because the priorities shift according to the size of the funding available. So obviously, if we get approved for the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, that can take those stormwater projects right out, and it moves everything up. If we have, obviously we don't have enough in our CIP to do $1.5 million of road pavement. So we would piecemeal that out. We would decide, you're going to have a lot of flexibility because it's whatever the town council wants. There aren't any hard and fast rules about where we allocate our capital funds. To speak to the sanitation alternative, this is an idea that Mr. McGee presented to me in the last 2 weeks, where right now, the resource recovery center where we haul all of our trash with garbage trucks, they're going under a complete renovation, and their site is terrible to drive through. It's destroying our tires every week, and sending all 9 of our trash trucks there on a daily, weekly basis is beating them up pretty bad. And that's not how it used to be done. We used to have one container truck that would use the compactor to compact it, put it in containers, and we could haul a lot more trash more efficiently with a separate vehicle without beating up on our fleet. And so this sanitation alternative proposes to reinstate the trash compactor, buy a number of compaction containers that could then be hauled with the roll-off truck instead of the sanitation vehicles.
Okay. My other piece was in relation to Parks and Rec. Well, I'd love to see all of these things done. I was wondering if it's in the works to potentially split these over the course of maybe 1 to 3 years. I know that basketball courts, it's a huge chunk to eat in 1 year. So I don't know if there was the potential to split that between 2 years. Same with the tennis courts. That was just some of my thought process. And then I'm assuming the Payne Field floodlights there, that's for the lights that go over the ball fields. Okay. The softball and baseball. Okay. I know those were in bad shape as well.
So with any capital project, you're going to trade off value for economies of scale. The more you spend, the cheaper per unit price it becomes. And so chunking it out will make it cost a little bit more overall, but you're going to be able to afford to do it piecemeal, or just, so much every year. We're going to commit to doing 3 basketball courts or 2 or however many. And you can start with the worst and work towards the better ones. But they're all in pretty bad condition. And again, these are all choices that we'll have to make. And right now, we're kind of looking at this globally ever since the strategic planning effort. When we get a clearer idea of how to proceed, we can then go back and say, okay, let's say the town council wants to commit $50,000 a year to basketball courts. Well, how much does it get us? And we could have a workshop discussion to say, well, really, you need 80, and things can be a little flexible there.
Okay. And then just finally, my overall notes are for spending the money, especially on some of these projects that were recommended, is I'd love to see it prioritized toward things that would get us an immediate return on investment or places where there is a revenue generating opportunity. I think that's important to consider. And I see that with some of these Parks and Rec projects. But overall, those are just my thoughts. So I'll turn the floor over.
Thank you. Mrs. Shockley.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with Mrs. Lima when she talks about the roads and how those are a priority for all of our residents. And that Parks and Rec is an area of our town where we can improve the town. I think it will be great for not just morale, but also bringing in funds of some sort. I wanted to be able to move forward with the EDC recommendation. I know it's not on the list, but their recommendation when they were here to get a report on kind of what we have for buildings that are available for commercial business in this town, start filling some of our available space. I think bringing people into the town and making it so more people stay here to go out to eat, do their shopping, that sort of thing. So those are things that I find to be ways that we could use the money to improve the town. I also think that we shouldn't be in a hurry to spend all of the money. Just for instance, to bring it back to the budget, we're going to be in some way, I believe this year, assisting the school with their capital maintenance via these funds. It's going to leave a large gap, I think, no matter how we end up slicing it in the end. So possibly have some that we can build, step up to where they have to be in a few years for their CIP, instead of this year we're paying for it all with ARPA, and next year we're not paying for any of it with ARPA, and making that a problem that we're just putting off till next year. So something to think about with that. Also, as far as not spending the money too quickly, when I think about a lot of these projects that we do have the infrastructure bank, or possibly we could get grant funding that needs a match, have the money available so that if there are things on this list that we could get outside funding towards, we would have the money available to actually be able to move forward. Because we have how many years to spend it, Mr. Marchand? 3 years. So that would be my other recommendation, is just to make sure that we're not so quick to spend it all that opportunities come our way, or we can make opportunities for ourselves in the next couple of years so that we can spend it smarter.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ludwig?
So I thought your proposal A was interesting. I'm going to need to reach out to my the residents in District 2 and get some feedback. I do remember seeing on the survey results that Councilor Lima mentioned, multiple people asking, how and whether additional funds can go to the school side. So that does sound in line with what we were seeing on some of those results. I do agree with some of the councilors here that I would like to see some of the funds not spent right away. But I'm wondering if we can get a middle ground, because the first 3 expenses from the ARPA funds we made from a council decision. So I'm hoping we can get a few things in the coming year using that money. So how do we move forward on a decision on maybe some of the funds? Do we just, want to send Mr. Marchand all of our suggestions for the first amount? Or this is probably the 3rd or 4th time we've talked about it, but how do we actually, come to a vote on at least some of the money?
Well, I mean, one way is simply to have any member of the council present a motion regarding the use of some funds, and then the council discusses it and votes on it. And we've got survey data. We've had a discussion on this 3 or 4 times, so we can proceed in that way. I do agree with you that we don't want to spend everything this year, that we want to see what funds might be available from outside sources so that we don't have to spend the money ourselves. And we also want to hold some money aside so that we have opportunities come year 2 and 3. So, I mean, there are decisions that you could propose tonight if you wish to move forward, but not spend the whole money.
I like what happened with our budget recommendations when we had to come together with the school issue, where we all submitted something via email, and then Mr. Marchand was able to find the overlapping themes and then kind of regurgitate that back to us. So I think that's an option. Another idea I'm just thinking out loud is maybe you say you kind of allocate the ARPA funds so many per year until the year needs to finish. You almost have an ARPA budget for each year. I'm just spitting out ideas. I haven't even fleshed this out. But I think a good start is just to whittle down, because we've been given a lot of information about capital improvement at this point. So I think now that we've had a chance to see this and digest it, if we maybe ask the council members to come up with, say, their 10 pieces, or 10 things that we've had sent to us out of the Historical Preservation Commission, the Parks and Rec, DPW, and the town side. We can send it all in and see if there's overlap from there.
Okay, we can certainly do that.
Oh, fire department too. Yep.
For the members of the public, we've been discussing a number of lists here, and I just want to mention to you, we did receive this list. I know you can't see it right here, but it was submitted to us. It's a list from DPW, and it lists 15 items, although a 16th item has not made this list, but we've talked about it often, and that is painting the Trestle Bridge. But on the list of the 15 that are presented by DPW, the smallest amount is for the millwork fencing project, which is $8,100. But the most expensive project is an asphalt road pavement program of $1,500,000. So it goes from something small like $8,000 up to over $1 million. But we do have a list of DPW projects. We also have a list that has been submitted by Parks and Recreation, and this has some suggested projects. And these are divided up as to what kind of money we would spend year 1, what kind of money we would spend year 2, and includes 10 items, some of which you've heard this evening: basketball courts, tennis courts, the parking lot at the Payne Field, playgrounds, community center floor, Payne Field floodlights, equipment garage, dog park, and pickleball courts. So you can see that there's a variety of items that are listed here for possibilities by Parks and Recreation and also by DPW. And we've also received requests from a couple other departments. So what's been suggested is that we would ask each of the council members to submit what would be maybe their top 5 or 6 items that they would like to see funded. And we could look at these items as we did with the recommendations for the budget, and see what kind of list we could then present to the council at another evening. Okay. I also do like the idea that was presented this evening for using some of town's opera funds for supporting the school. There's a benefit to that, and there's a win-win for both the school and for the town. Because if we were to use some of our opera funds to help support the capital improvement projects that the school has, for which it doesn't have enough money, we would be able to help the school meet its minimum maintenance requirements. And that would mean that we could get 42% back in what was spent in housing aid. And there's a big win-win for us, because if they get the money and they spend it, then the town gets money back. And so we all would win in that situation. So the proposal that Mr. Marchand has made this evening is that the town would use, I think I'm going by this sheet here, $768,211. We would use, this is from the town's opera funds, $768,211. We would give that to the school for use for capital improvement projects that would help them meet their minimum maintenance requirement, which this year is 3% of their operating budget. And then they would be able to make some strides toward improvements in their school, but we would also be able to make a great stride in getting some money back. So I don't know if members of the council are ready to have a motion and vote on that this evening, but we need to probably get this done, this action done, so that when we come to May 2nd and we're voting for the budget, the appropriation that we're going to send to the voters, we know whether this money is in or out.
I'm not prepared to vote on an amount of the ARPA funds that would go to the schools at this moment. More than happy to make sure we do that before we set a budget, if these funds are going to be part of that budget. But
that would be May 2nd next week.
I know, I understand that. I don't know that 768,211 is the appropriate amount.
Okay, what would your recommendation be for how we would find out what is the appropriate amount? Because we've got 1 week and we don't have a lot of time, so we have to make some decisions whether we're going to allow some money in or not. Mr. Gorham, do you have some suggestions for us?
Actually, I just wanted to alert you that on the ARPA funds, although it's under the banner for discussion and or action, the particular budget item, it doesn't really indicate that it's up for action tonight. So
Okay.
I think Member Shockley is correct. It might be better if you vote on it later. Is there still, I think there's still time.
Well,
It's
the budget is going to be a budget that would be presented for a vote next week, May 2nd, includes that as part of the consideration. Mr. Marchant?
Yeah, just for a point of clarification, there wouldn't be any funds in the budget that as proposed for the minimum maintenance requirement. And therefore, it doesn't need to be part of the budget because we're using ARPA funds and the school committee is using ESSER funds. So it's really kind of a leap of faith that we had this conversation about how to fund the minimum maintenance requirement, but by taking it out of the budget and putting it in their operations, it's not there. We only have 110,000 for school capital that's actually in the 2023 budget. The balance, well, 110,000 for the municipal side and the $1 million for their maintenance staff and buildings and grounds maintenance. But the difference is all subject to the ESSER and ARPA funds being utilized for the capital later. And it's not part of the budget.
So is it appropriate that the council would vote to make an appropriation of, say, $768,211 from our opera funds for use by the schools?
Yes, and the town council could do that anytime between now and 10 months from now, so long as the school would have time to incur those costs before June 30, 2023.
So that's a vote that does not have to take place May 2nd.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Okay, other questions? Mrs. Shockley?
You had actually asked a question and then Mr. Gorham answered something for us, which I appreciate. But I wanted to state that my concern here is simply that we're not putting enough money into the CIP budget for the schools to catch up in just a couple of years to what they actually are going to need to be part of the budget. So I would want to increase that, whether it is by adding an additional 0.25% to the tax levy. Also, I'm wondering, and I would like Mr. Marchant to be able to speak to, even though we're splitting these up in the budget, 110,000 for the school's CIP and 955 for the town's CIP, it's all really $1 million in CIP. So next year we could always reallocate some of the total amount of the CIP as well to make the budget work.
Sure, because we're basically getting $1 million of CIP into the tax base for next year. Now, one of the things that I would caution the council on is this year has been a relatively easy budget because of the $1 million that fell off of the school debt this year. And that allowed us to absorb and do these capital projects on a one-time basis. Next year, we won't have that. And so it's going to be a much more challenging budget to balance, and we're not going to have a lot of capacity to add to the capital and add to the contingency and anything else we would otherwise want to add to the budget.
Could you explain that better? $1 million fell off
So,
of
and
bond payments?
yeah, so the school bond, we paid off one of the notes and we have $1 million less per year in bond payments to make.
Mhm.
And that was baked into our budget. So we were able to reallocate that $1 million from bond payment to capital in this
So-
budget.
So the $1 million that's in the budget this year is from that bond payment. It's baked in every year as capital
Yeah.
to the budget.
Well,
Okay.
we're using it as capital for
This year.
2023.
Yep.
Right.
That-
Next year, we might be short and we might say, oh, no, inflation went crazy. We only have 400,000 left of that to continue for capital in 2024. Maybe we'll have more, maybe we'll have less because the future's out there. But the idea is we know that fell off this year and made budgeting a lot easier in that sense because we had those resources to work with. Next year, we don't anticipate that same kind of benefit to be part of our budget process. So it'll be a much tighter budget.
Additional questions by members of the council? Are we ready to move on? All right, so I just remind the members of the public that there will be another public hearing on the budget on Saturday in this location. And on next Monday, the council on May 2nd, the council will vote for the appropriation that they are going to submit to the voters at a referendum in May. Now moving on to agenda item D2, discussion and or action to approve the personnel policy manual for the town of Coventry. This is reference pages 4 to 51, and the resolution is on page 4. May I have a motion to approve the personnel policy manual?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you. May I have a second? I second the motion. Discussion. Members of the council, Mrs. Shockley.
Thank you. I had some questions just on just whether or not these are policies that as a town, in certain cases, we can or would ever use. For instance, you mentioned performance reviews that would lead to raises based on earning a raise. Now, raises typically are, and I'm thinking you're talking about our directors and people who could get a raise.
It would
Outside of
be
union.
anyone non-union that isn't on a step and COLA progression. Yes.
And I just wasn't sure, can we or do we do that? I mean, I know typically they get raises based on whether the council approves the increase. So during the course of a year, do you have increases built into the budget where you could give performance raises?
So with this budget, yes, that I've budgeted for certain amounts, but I don't necessarily have to follow the budget if I don't think someone's performance is up to snuff, and they'll get less of an increase than I budgeted for, because that's smart budgeting. You don't want to go over budget if you can help it. And there's different ways of working that into the budget, but essentially I believe in a pay for performance. I believe in a merit-based compensation system, and that employees should be rewarded for working hard and performing well. And that's what that program is intended to achieve. Now, just because that would apply to non-union members of the employee base doesn't mean you wouldn't also use performance evaluations for the union members to have that regular check-in to see how the job is going, to communicate about performance, to raise issues. And performance evaluations could also be used for improvement, training, and possible discipline if you're having problems and the job's not getting done.
And some of these, I wasn't sure if they were happening currently. Basically, what were changes as opposed to what was already part of the manual. So do we do a mid-year and annual review?
Not yet.
Okay, so
That's something that
was done.
my aspiration is to implement that and have more more communication with employees on their performance.
Okay. Also, I apologize. I happen to work in an office that has union staff, and I was a manager there. So it just makes me think with some of these, like with selection, I know that in the union, there are roles. It's how many years you've worked here, seniority, that sort of thing. So a lot of this seems to just pertain to non-union staff.
So the way you need to think about, or the way I approach a personnel policy manual is it's a manual for the entire town for all employees as if there were no unions. Like this is what's going to govern employees with or without a union contract. And anything that the union contracts don't address will be covered under the policy manual. And from there, any employees that are organized and have a collective bargaining unit, their collective bargaining unit terms and their contracts will prevail above and beyond what's in the policy manual.
So the contract supersedes the manual if the contract
on those, on a case by case basis for every specific provision.
And I apologize. I just have a couple. I had gone through this, and I think they're all relatively related to each other. This was one that stood out on page 30 of our packet, but 25 of the manual. You had a step 7 that one of the disciplinary considerations would be a suspension of benefits for poor performance. Is that something that we can or would do? I don't know that I would approve of that if they're still being paid.
So the idea behind that is that if someone should be disciplined, rather than a suspension of not coming into work and losing a day of pay, that it's something short of that, where maybe you suspend their accrual of vacation and sick leave for 2 weeks in lieu of not coming in at all for a day.
I would like to check and see if we're allowed to do that. That just doesn't sound like something that you would be allowed to do. And that stands out. I am not saying this for everyone's humor. I really, as I read it, it struck me as, is that something that we could even do legally? So I would like to check, and maybe you already have, but that one stood out to me.
Are you talking about page 30 of 54 of our packet, item step number 7? Is that where you're talking?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Similar to when we were doing the charter review, and they wanted to make it so someone had to live in town to be you can't. It's just something that can't be done. So I wouldn't want to put something in there that couldn't
typically be done. Any benefits that the employer offers that are not federally mandated and required to be offered can be revoked. So there's no law that requires that people get paid sick time or paid vacation time. That's a benefit that employers offer to recruit and attract and retain employees. And so when you're dealing with an optional benefit that the employer is giving, the employer can also take it away under certain circumstances. And that's the rationale behind that.
Yeah. And it would just be my opinion, not the opinion of the council. But if someone's coming to work, they haven't been suspended, I would want them to accrue the benefits that they were offered. On page 35 of the packet, 30 of the, it says 40 hours. Do we work a 40-hour week here? Is that the hour?
So the federal labor law is 40 hours is a standard work week. Now within Coventry, we have people that have regular work weeks of 35 and 37 hours. But if someone is on a 35-hour work week schedule, they don't begin to accrue overtime until they cross the 40-hour threshold. Yep. So the next 5 hours are straight time. And so that's just following that labor law.
Perfect. I can't comment.
Excuse me. Please, no comments now, but you're allowed to make comments as soon as we get to public comment. Thank you.
And then I don't really need you to explain this now. I just, on page 38, it's page 33 of the booklet. Regular part-time employees shall accrue paid sick leave at the rate of 4.5% of their hours worked. I couldn't do that math in my head. So if you could explain it to me at some point. So if you work for an hour, you get 4.
The idea is that we have a lot of longtime employees that are part-time that don't get any benefits.
Mhm.
And that this would be a proportionate way of allowing them to accrue some sick leave. So if they do get sick, they can use sick leave
And is that a
rather
kind
than
of-
just time off without pay.
Is that
Well,
a kind of standard rate, 4.5%? Honestly, I just looked at the number and I was like, I can't wrap my head around it, so I'm going to ask.
it's a rate I came up with for part-time workers because, they have a lot of time off and they don't generally need to use sick time, but it's a starting point. I'd certainly be open to using different rates of pay, but 10% might be on the high end, whatever.
Yeah, I'm not giving a rate. I just
Yeah.
truly wasn't sure where that number came from. So thank you. That's all I have.
Any other questions by members of the council? I know that at my first meeting as a member of the town council in November 2018, one of the agenda items was approval of a personnel manual. It was a change to the personnel manual. And there were a number of questions that members of the council had. And there was supposed to be a revision and we were supposed to see a draft come back to us. And it's now over 2 years later and we still are operating with an outdated personnel manual. So I'm happy to see that work has been made. The personnel manual has been sent to all of us in draft form. We all were allowed in time, ample time, months in fact, to make comments and suggestions, which Mr. Marchand did incorporate into this particular document. I can understand Mrs. Shockley has some concerns about the document, but it has been on our agenda at least 2 or 3 times in the past, and we have all had an opportunity to make some comments on it. Any other comments by members of the council? Mrs. Lima.
I know that earlier today there were concerns from the union regarding several clauses in this. And I know a response went over just before the meeting addressing some of those, but I was hoping maybe we could have legal counsel talk about the response to that communication.
Sure. The town manager stated it very succinctly at the beginning of his presentation. This does not apply to collective bargaining agreements, period.
I would clarify that that is true, but whenever there's something in the proposed personnel policy manual that is not covered by the collective bargaining agreement, then once this would be adopted by the town council, I would formally send a copy of the new personnel policy manual to each of the unions, and they would have a period of time to notify management as to whether they would like to meet and confer about various provisions and the impacts they would have. So if there was a provision on some extraneous detail that wasn't part of the collective bargaining agreement and it impacts them financially or by their workload or in some way, then we would be required to sit down and bargain the impact.
So that seems kind of backwards to have us approve something that probably, like, why wouldn't it go there first and then come back to us?
Because that's the legal process of how it is typically happens, that the employer exercises the employer's right to set the terms, policies, and conditions of employment. And then for anything that the union claims is a hardship or a cost or something, then we would negotiate on those points. Now, we are currently in collective bargaining with the International Brotherhood of Police Officers, and our contract with Council 94 is up at the end of this year. So we will be in negotiations fairly shortly with both unions, and we could discuss any issues then or now.
Any other comments by members of the council?
So
Mr. Shockley.
while I understand that the process is to approve it and then, for lack of a better word, have it grieved, can't we just skip that part and make sure that it won't be grieved, and maybe it could cost us a lot less money in legal fees? No offense.
Like I said, I am not on one side or the other. I like
So-
y'all.
But I
So-
am
so-
really just looking to get it done in the fastest, least expensive way.
So I think that the course that we're on is the fastest, least expensive legal way, because we could be negotiating the proposed draft forever because it's not adopted, it's not real, it doesn't stick. And we could go back and forth, and we're really bargaining OA management rights and a lot of things that aren't subject to bargaining. The reason that you adopt it first is because then it is an adopted policy that sticks, and it's incumbent on the union to show how it has an impact on them and their request to bargain the specific points. To not do that, to give them the draft today means you would be bargaining everything, every sentence, every word, the entire document. Whereas impact bargaining would limit it to those issues that they say have an impact.
Mr. Gorham, can I get your input?
Sure. Well, I agree with what the town manager says. Not every single, what I said was that it does not supersede the collective bargaining agreement on things that have been bargained and are in the contract written. But the collective bargaining agreement can't anticipate everything that could ever happen between the town manager, who is responsible for management of this town. That's the way this town is set up in its charter. He is the chief administrative officer, so he has significant power over the people who work for the town. Can't anticipate every single possible thing that comes up, and most collective bargaining agreements don't. All this does is provides a template outside of the collective bargaining agreement for things that are not bargained for. And if management or the union wants certain things that are not in the collective bargaining agreement, they can talk about it at the bargaining table, which happens all the time, as all of you know, because you've been there. So the town is entitled to have an employee manual to set forth the rules for working for the town. And the unions certainly have the right to collectively bargain. There is no state that's stronger than Rhode Island, giving them those rights. The state of Rhode Island is one of the states that lets them bargain on everything, not just rates of pay and benefits, but conditions of employment as well. A lot of states don't even allow that, and they don't have to. It's protected by the 11th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. So I think this town manager's explanation was very concise. I just wanted to give a little background about why it is that way and why I don't think that this vitiates any of the expectations of the collective bargaining units of our town. Okay.
Thank you. All right, any other member of the council with a question? Ms. Ludwig?
Not a question, but I know for those who haven't been able to see the document, I really like that we're putting something together that says what our mission is, core values, putting it down in black and white. This is something that the council has worked very hard on for many, many months to collect feedback from residents and put some strategic items out there about how we see our town, the people we live and work with. And I think these mission and core values are straight on with what I've seen from my interaction with town staff and what I want us to look like going forward. So I think there's definitely some great things in here that should get adopted.
Hey, thank you. Any other comments? As I mentioned before, in November 2018, I'll mention this again, we had an very outdated policy manual that came before us. And here it is over 2 years later. An outdated policy does no good to either management or to the employees at all. It's a benefit to the employees and to management, of course, when we have a document that is clearly stated, that has been approved by the council. It gives us a starting point. It gives us a good base. So I'm in favor of doing this. I spent literally hours going through this policy, making comments and suggestions. All of us had an opportunity. Mr. Marchand was very, very religious about incorporating the ideas that were submitted to him. And I'd also mention that I used to make a living as a person who wrote policies, and I'm still writing policies for over 3 years, well, it's now 5 years, working with the school committee to develop the policies that apply to both the staff and to the students. So I take this business of writing a policy manual, reviewing policy manuals very, very seriously. And I do consider the point of view of everyone who is impacted by a policy. I would like to see this policy approved this evening. And then if we have to go back to the drawing board and work on some items, let's do it. But an outdated one does no one any good whatsoever. And as I said before, this is over 2 years. It's probably was 3 years or 5 years old in 2018. So are we ready for a vote or more comments?
It doesn't make sense to me to approve something you know that you're going to have to go back to the drawing board on.
I don't know. I don't really know that we have to go back to the drawing board on it. I mean, why would we go back to the drawing board unless there was some issue that was raised?
Well,
we negotiated, we were on the negotiation team for the SRP contract, and we've done a very, very thorough job in negotiating contracts, both for the police, the IBPO, the SRP, and the CTA. So I'm not sure that we're going to go back to the drawing board. I mean, I would vote for this because this is the policy that I believe is an appropriate policy for the town. And I spent literally hours going through this twice now. So I'm not writing this and revising this just because I think we're going to go back to it again.
I don't feel comfortable approving something when it sounds like we don't have buy-in from the town's employees. Like, I'd want people to be proud of a policy manual of the place that they work and all agree that this is how we should govern ourselves and our rules. And it doesn't feel like we have that. So
what would you suggest that we do to get this buy-in that you feel is important?
Well, it seems like we're not far from a consensus point based on the notification we received today on a few points. So if we could, I feel like if it's a matter of just a phone call or whatever it is between the two parties about these 2 or 3 points, I think everyone would feel a whole lot better about updating these and approving it.
We certainly can do that, but who would be the spokesperson or the spokespersons who would gather together to give feedback to the town manager? I mean, we have to identify who are the appropriate people that would give the feedback.
Yeah, we can do that. I don't know that we have to figure that out right in this moment, but I would feel better if we were implementing policies that everybody was happy to abide by or people felt proud of in terms of conducting themselves. And it seems like we don't have that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other comments by members of the council? We did have a motion. We do have a second. We've had discussion, and we'll do a roll call, and we'll see where we are at this point in time.
President Dixon, just want to be careful because the way things are proceeding here, are we gonna max ourselves out on a vote here? Because if we proceed and let's just hypothetically say it was 2-2, what do we do with the policy?
The manual does not pass.
Right. So what would have to happen in the future to bring it back?
A tie vote doesn't bind either side from presenting it again. There are I'm not sure what the council rules which we drew together provides. I don't have it on I didn't expect a 2-2 vote question. However, my experience as a legislator is that the person, if there is a vote down of something, typically, the person, I think this is in the rules of the House of Representatives, for example, a member of the House on the prevailing side of the vote can move for reconsideration. I don't have our rules in front of us. I'm not certain that it deals with that. But I mean, generally speaking, if you have a majority to bring something back to the floor again, you're probably going to have one of those votes on a 5-member council who is now of the belief that it should be reconsidered. So with a 2-2, I can't see how a rule could ever provide that with a tie vote, with one member being absent, that you couldn't consider it again. That's absurd. So,
Okay.
I mean, one way to look at this is maybe you just wait until you have 5 here and ready to vote.
I think that's a great idea. And one other thing I would like to ask is, it seems like a lot of this is questions from the union that this is going to immediately apply to them until proven otherwise. So I think that's the discussion we need to have is, I believe, Mr. Marchant, you have said union rules are binding on anything that the contract covers.
Right.
So if there are things in the contract on things such as hours worked, on how many vacation days you get, how many holidays you get, if those things are already covered in the contract, they're not going to change until and unless they change during a union negotiation.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that has to be made comfortable and clear to the staff of the town. And at that point, I think if this came back forward in front of 5 of us, I think a lot of the policy is very, very good.
Yeah, this is something that I feel like should be a mundane vote, that it's like, you pass it and that's it. And I don't feel like it should feel like this. And while it sounds simple, what Councilmember Shockley said of just coming to that understanding, it might even be 3 sentences. I don't know. I think if we can come to that understanding first, I would feel a whole lot better about this.
I don't believe that just having one more member here to vote would be justification for voting without going forward and getting more information. What you're asking for is more information. We're not just asking for one more person to make the deciding vote here, if that's how it comes down.
Yeah.
Right? Well, it doesn't always have to be 5-0, but I can understand what you're saying. But just having one more person here, that's not the reason why we're not having the vote, or people do not want the vote. They want something to happen. So I just want to understand before we leave, and there's an agreement here, what has to happen in order for people to be comfortable to vote. So what has to happen?
Exactly what you said, Kim.
Yeah. I can't say that I need to wait for everyone to say, yes, I'm okay with it. But I do need Mr. Marchant just to have that conversation go forward. I believe someone from the union perhaps reached out. So to just make sure that it is clearly in writing relayed that anything in the contract, we will not immediately change until proven. We're not going to ask forgiveness, not permission. We are going to wait until the union negotiation to change anything if both sides choose to. That's in the contract.
Mr. Marchant?
That was precisely the content of the email that I sent out this evening, just before the meeting, to the Council 94 representative and their other representatives. So it is very explicitly stated in that email, the rules that we're following, that even within the personnel policy manual, it explicitly states on page 6, I believe, that if there's any conflict between this policy and the charter and the code of ordinances, that the charter and the code of ordinances prevail. And if there's any conflict between this and the collective bargaining agreement, the collective bargaining agreement prevails.
Mrs. Shockley?
I know I'm like rudely speaking out of turn and breaking all policy and procedure, so I apologize. I simply think that the union members need to hear that from the union representative before we can vote. And once that happens, I'm more than happy to vote on the manual.
Mrs. Lima?
Yeah, I would agree. If we could just see a receipt of that message or acknowledgement from the union to that email, because it did go out just before this meeting, then I'd feel better.
Mr. Marchant, can you make that happen?
No. I can't respond for them.
No,
I
but
can
I
wait
mean-
for a
but you-
response,
but-
but I
yeah,
can't make them
But you can,
respond.
I know what, you understand. People can't see you smiling.
I'll
now.
let you know. I'll let you know. when
Or
I
we
hear
could
from
even
them.
make public ourselves in certain instances what you wrote. Totally up to you how you'd like to do it.
Sure, that's fine.
If, with that being the case, then I would make a motion to table until that occurs.
Or Ms. Ludwig could withdraw her motion. Did you make the motion? You made the motion. You can just withdraw your motion for now, if you wish to.
Or I'll second the motion to table it.
Is that
I'm
what
not
we're
going to
gonna-
withdraw my motion.
Okay. So we have a motion to table the motion to approve the personnel policy manual. We have a motion, we have a second. This is the motion to approve the tabling. Ms. Ludwig,
Sorry.
are you?
Approve the tabling?
Yes.
No.
Mrs. Lima,
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley,
Yes.
to table. Mrs. Dixon, no, it's 2-2 to table. So that means that it is tabled.
Effectively, I agree. Well, we hit the 2-2 after all.
In my experience, technically that failed to table because you failed to get a yes and a
It doesn't-
tie and it goes back to the original motion. Effectively, you're going to have the same
Effectively-
outcome and then
effectively,
you're
we
going to
did
have to
not
come
have an
back
approval
anyway.
to
I know-
table.
I have heard nothing, just to be clear, I have heard nothing tonight that would form a basis for preventing the council from considering this in full again. Absolutely. It can, the conditions that were discussed weren't really unreasonable anyway. So,
Okay, the motion to table was 2-2, so it does not prevail. So now we're going to vote on the motion itself and see where we are at that point. So we have a motion to approve the personnel policy manual. We had a second, and so now we're going to have the roll call vote. Ms. Ludwig,
Yes.
Mrs. Lima,
No.
Mrs. Shockley,
No.
Mrs. Dixon, yes. 2 yeas and 2 nays. The motion does not pass. We have a tie. Thank you. Agenda resolution for discussion and or action ratification of the Police Major Skorsky's contract for the Coventry Police Department. May I have a motion to ratify the contract?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion. Roll call vote. Ms. Ludwig,
Yes.
Mrs. Lima,
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley,
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon, yes. 4 yeas, no nays. The council has ratified Police Major Skorsky's contract for the Coventry Police Department. Next, Agenda E2, ratification of resolution to support Senate Bill S 2220 relating to water and navigation, the Johnson's Pond Protection Act, reference pages 52 for the resolution. So if you could turn to the resolution on page 52. As resolved that the Coventry Town Council requests that the Rhode Island General Assembly approve and enact the following bills submitted in the January 2022 session. Senate Bill 2180 entitled, An Act Relating to Waters and Navigation, Inspection of Dams and Reservoirs, an environmental study of Johnson's Pond, which provides a dedicated grant of funding to DEM specifically to commission an environmental study for the public benefit. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Discussion. Roll call vote. Ms. Ludwig,
Yes.
Mrs. Lima,
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley,
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon, yes. 4 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. Next, Agenda F1, first reading for proposed amendment to Chapter 175, Section 5, Use of Facilities. Oh, I'm sorry. E2, ratification of additional cost of the award of 2022 statistical update and reevaluation program in the amount of $3,565 within the town of Coventry. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Discussion. Mr. Marchand, could you please speak to this?
Yes. The tax assessor regrets that she failed to include the full amount on the last resolution, and this is correcting the difference from what they had quoted and bid. And so this is the correct amount.
Okay. Any other question that members of the council may have?
Yes.
Ms. Ludwig?
Have we just double checked, like they were not going to have any more come back? Okay, because I feel comfortable approving this, but then I'm going to have egg on my face if we have to come back and prove another amount for a different number.
This is the number.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Mrs. Lima?
Along that same vein, we've confirmed too that this final amount is within the budget that we're working with, the line?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Okay, roll call vote. Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon? Yes. 4 yeas, no nays. The motion is approved.
First reading.
Agenda F1, first reading for the proposed amendment to Chapter 175, Section 5, use of facilities of the Town of Coventry Municipal Code to include the prohibition of electronic, cigarette, and similar vaping devices at town athletic and recreational facilities. This is the first reading, and usually we ask for a motion to dispense with the first reading, but this is so important. One of our council members has brought this to our attention. So I'd like to please ask Mrs. Lima just to give us highlights, please.
Sure.
Please sit down and be comfortable, and then we'll call on you.
She's
From the task force.
Yes, I understand that, but I'm going to ask Mrs. Lima, who worked on this amendment, to just give some highlights for the public.
Sure. Just the story behind this, I had met Dana at a substance abuse task force event at the middle school last year, and we talked about how the current ordinance as it relates to tobacco, smoking, and the like, the use of substances at public facilities here in Coventry, particularly parks and other recreational facilities, didn't include banning the concept of vaping and e-cigarettes. So as someone, in the interest of helping to make that change and protecting our children and the others who are trying to enjoy time with their family at parks and recreation facilities, what this proposed ordinance change does is just add that component. And I'll invite Dana to come up and talk more about this effort.
Okay, please come forward, state your name and address, please, and the organization with which you are affiliated.
Dana DeVerna, 1 Marion Drive, and I'm the coordinator for the Coventry Substance Abuse Task Force. So I had brought this to their attention, so I appreciate this opportunity. Just wanted to kind of mimic what other communities have been doing to just make the outdoor safe area for our youth during sporting events, playground, and enjoying some of the parks and recreational fields that we have here. And currently it just includes combustible cigarettes. So we were just looking for an ordinance change and an amendment just to add all vaping cigarettes, anything encompassing that, to just fall into the same ordinance with the same penalty code.
Okay, any questions anyone would like to ask?
I know.
Lima?
Yes. Well, I just was for the public record, if you could just talk about, there's been discussion about, because the signs currently we have only say tobacco use. So if you could talk about that plan if this passes.
I was able to obtain a grant through the Department of Health. Once this ordinance was amended, I have 55 signs that would be purchased so we could hang up throughout the town with no cost to the town. So it's all taken care of.
Okay.
That would include the ordinance code, the fine, and like pictures of the cigarettes, and we can move forward with whatever else needs to be on it. But that would be taken care of from the task force through a grant from the Department of Health.
And then we just work with Parks and Rec to get them installed.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you very much for coming this evening. We appreciate it. So now I'll ask for a motion to dispense with the entire reading of the ordinance and the amendment.
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Roll call vote, Ms. Ludwig,
Yes.
Mrs. Lima,
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley.
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon, yes. 4 yeas, no nays. Agenda D1, Town Manager Update.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that the Coventry Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee continues to work, and the beta group continues to complete interviews. I had my interview with them this afternoon, and they said that it's been a huge brain dump of all the perspectives, history, knowledge of so many great people in Coventry. It's been really great, and they've been taking it all in. But what we're anticipating and looking forward to is a large community open house on Wednesday, May 25th. That'll be at the 50 Wood Street Human Services Building, and this will be an opportunity to invite the community to be a part of community building and planning the future of Coventry, how they would like to see development happen or not happen, what the key areas of investment ought to be as far as neighborhood services, parks, amenities, business, industrial, housing, affordable housing, everything that has to do with the community. This is the community's opportunity to participate. It's not the last opportunity, it's the first, but we hope we can get a lot of people interested in coming out and participating in this plan exercise.
I'm
Mrs.
just
Shockley.
wondering if we could get some sort of invitation made for that, not to be mailed, but something that we could post online, something that we could share via email or social media with that information. Like, this is what we're looking for. Can't wait to get your input, because then we could really start blasting it.
Sure. I know they've been working on the website and having information put together, and I'm very grateful to have some reinforcements join the ranks. We have an interim director of planning and development. His name's Mr. Herb Durfee, and he's already taken the ball and is running with it. And he's already talking about how we can do a better job communicating out to the public and getting people involved. So we'll certainly take you up on that request.
Thank you. Mrs. Lima.
Just a quick comment. I already did my interview, and I have to say I was very pleased with the team from the consulting group. They felt very knowledgeable to me, and I felt like they asked good questions. And I really enjoyed my interview. Anne was also part of my interview group. And I'm really looking forward to where this is going to go. I have a lot of confidence in this consultant so far. So thanks.
Yes, I would say that it was a very thorough interview, and Bruce Hageman, the engineer, was on the interview panel with us. And how many people were interviewing us?
Like five.
About five people interviewing us. It was an hour-long Zoom meeting, so it was a very thorough interview, and they actually did some follow-up questions also. So they are very intent on doing a very good job. They're very organized in their approach. They've produced a schedule. They've received feedback from us about modifications to the schedule so that there can be greater participation by members of the public. And so certainly we would hope that members of the public would attend this meeting on May 25th, because here's an opportunity for you to talk to the project team and tell them about the kind of community that you want to live in, what you enjoy about living here now and what you would like to see improved, because that comprehensive plan is actually the framework for ordinances that we may change going forward, how we would see development occurring, how much open land we want to preserve, et cetera. So it's a very important document, and it sets the stage for the next 10 years of our life here. So by all means, keep track of this May 25th date. Okay, next we come to Agenda H, public comment. If there are any members of the public who would like to ask a question, please raise your hand, be recognized by me, and come to the podium. And if you're on chat, please raise your hand, and our IT administrator, Mr. Horton, will let you in. When you're ready to ask a question, state your name and address. And I do reserve the right, just a moment, I do reserve the right to limit questions until everyone has had I'll limit up comments until everyone has had an opportunity to speak. So I'm going to ask you to please keep your comments to 2 minutes. And I will keep track of that time. And then after everyone has had an opportunity to speak, if you'd like to come back and speak again, that's fine with us. We'll stay as long as there are comments to be made. So we're not going to end the meeting at any artificial time. We will keep going as long as people have to make comments. You can make comments about any subject. But as you know, the council listens to comments, but we don't engage in a dialogue during the public comment session. So is anyone who would like to speak? Please come forward. Hello, how are you? Your name and address, please.
Jay Andrea, 560 Lee Hill Road.
Excuse me, one person at a time?
We're speaking together on behalf of the meeting.
Okay,
She's going to address that.
okay,
I'm,
just,
over 34.
okay, just a moment. Okay, and who else is speaking?
Ernest Montalillo, Local 3484, Vice President,
And your address?
84 Coventry Drive.
Thank you. Okay,
So first, I wanted to just address the policy handbook that
Certainly.
maybe about 6 months ago, the town manager told me that this was coming about. So there's no confusion on it or anything. He also told me that it was something that we were going to probably work together with. He had his ideas of what he was going to go forward with, but basically keep us in the loop on it. A lot of the issues I had with it, and I didn't get a chance because we just seen it today, where I was able to read it, and then I contacted our business agent on it. But a lot of the issues I had is the word termination in there. That was in there, I think at least 20 times. We have in our contract, we have just cause. Nobody can be terminated without just cause. So you need to have that prior to. And I know this town manager doesn't feel like you need to have just cause and he can just terminate people. But we have that.
excuse me, I'm sorry.
Well, that's,
I
I'm sorry then. I'm sorry. Okay.
No, I appreciate, all the members of the council appreciate people coming this evening and making comments.
Yeah.
But I don't want to cast any
I'm sorry if
aspersions
that
on
came
any
across the
members.
wrong way. I'm sorry.
Any kind of aspersions on
Sure.
any of our leadership
Sure,
here. But
sure.
stick to the facts. And
Absolutely. Right now, we have 5 grievances on unfair labor that we have dates set for. We also have 2 grievances that are coming up that will be going to step 4. That's for arbitration. So that's going to be a total of 7 grievances and unfair labors against the town. The issue that we have here is that we feel as though I feel as though we're not being heard. And I think it with this policy handbook, you discuss a lot in there about terminations, and it gives the town manager the discretion as to what and how he wants to determine things. So in other words, what can end up happening is he can sit there and say, you're terminated, but you have full right to go through your arbitration and use the contract. But the problem with that is that someone's out of work. Someone doesn't have a job, and that happens immediately. And that's the thing that's upsetting to a lot of people. This is a small group that we put together in a short time to come to talk to the council and to let you know that we have real issues that's going on right now. And you're talking about negotiations coming up. I don't see them going well. So is there going to be legal expenses? Yeah, there's going to be legal expenses. We've already had the council. We had Michael Downey come down, who is the head president of all the local unions, to meet with the town manager, and it didn't go well. And so there are true issues, and I feel as though a strong arm approach is what's happening here. I've tried nothing more than to work with the town. I tried it with the interim town manager. The town manager we have now, I'd love to work with the town. I like to solve problems, and I don't feel as though we're giving that. And I feel as though with this policy handbook and the way that it's written, you talk about nepotism. There's something that's in there. So 2 people that can't have a romantic relationship, we have 2 people in one department that are married. So one person's going to have to leave. So one person has 14 days to find a new job. I just think it's unfair.
Each department has the same thing. They have a husband and wife that work together. These are things that are already in there, never talked about us. I definitely think that's a change in working conditions. Telling people you can't make political contributions, I don't do that. You know what I'm saying? Those are things that are in the policy that I think that if you talked, you know what I mean? I'm sure we could come to a reasonable agreement on, but to say that you can't help in a campaign or do that, I participate in campaigns all the time. If it costs me my job, then so be it, but I don't think that any job, especially when you've been here for 17 years like I have, you can come back and say, now you can't participate anymore, even though I've actively participated and donated for the last 20 years.
Okay, gentlemen, I would like to make sure that if there are any other people in the audience who would like to make comments, they have an opportunity to do so. So may I ask for other comments? And then if you can sit down and we'll get other comments, and then you can always come back again. Thank you. Is there any other member of the public who would like to make a comment? I want to give everyone a chance to speak because I know many of you have come out this evening and we haven't seen you before. So we want to give you an opportunity. Okay, Mr. Horton, is there anyone on chat who would like to make a comment? No hands up. Okay, would you like to come back again? Thank you.
Just state our name again.
Yes.
Ernest Nautilillo, 84 Coventry Drive. I'm
And,
here as Vice President of Local
okay,
3484.
and Jay,
J. Andrea,
your address, please.
560 Eva Hill Road.
Thank you.
So to read this, because it's easier. Good evening. As I said, my name is Ernest Nautilillo of 84 Coventry Drive. Tonight, I'm here speaking as Vice President of Local 3484 Coventry Municipal Employees. Our union has obtained over a 90% rate of no confidence in the town manager and the finance director. The latest incident in payroll last week had made matters much worse for morale when Mr. Marchant openly on the news blamed one of our payroll clerks when she did her due diligence and put her part in on April 20th at 9:45 a.m. After the file's uploaded, it's common procedure that it goes to the finance director and then she handles it from there. To blame one of our employees is absolutely wrong. To ruin their name like that. I said we've had multiple people fired over the last couple of months without just cause. In addition, these employees weren't given the due process that are entitled to them through case law in the Supreme Court. Our union is in the process currently of filing complaints in federal court as we speak. We also have numerous unfair labors like Jay had spoke about and many complaints with the state labor board as well. As additional, many grievances are heading towards the arbitration process. Our employees are the backbone of everything that gets accomplished in this town, from plowing snow, maintaining fields, collecting trash, answering 911 phone calls, collecting taxes, issuing permits, licenses, and much more. And for everybody to come to work in fear of being terminated for any reason has caused morale to reach an all-time low. In our history, we've never had as many unfair labor practices or pending arbitrations going on. Thank you for your time. I know you guys can't speak on it. We just wanted to make you guys aware that over 90% of the body, which we went to, the only ones we didn't go to were the ones that were terminated, have signed on and voted no confidence in the current manager and the finance director.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Are there any other members who would like to speak? Mr. Smith,
She's got my name.
please state your name and address, please.
Charles Smith, 203 Weaver Hill Road, Coventry. So one of the things that Mr. Marchand said early in his budget presentation, and he mentioned it briefly, was about a mountain that was in front of us, but we'd get to it at a later date. I think that's something, going back my history of the town, I worked for the town for 39 years. I'm on the planning board currently. Kids live in town, my grandkids live in town, and I've seen this can get kicked down the road. And like Mr. Marchand said, that mountain is out there and we really need to look at it now, not 5 years from now or 10 years from now when my grandkids have to, deal with that bird. So we need to address that and get it squared away.
Thank you very much. Any other member of the public who would like to speak? Mr. Horton, is anyone on the? No hands raised. Okay, thank you. Okay, public comment is now closed. Agenda I, executive session. May I have a motion from a member of the council to adjourn into executive session to consider the following? One, close pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A1, discussions of job performance, character, physical, and mental health of a person or persons, specifically for the council to discuss evaluation of the town manager. And number two, close pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42465A2, sessions pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation, specifically to discuss the status of the Center of New England receivership matters, captioned as Nicholas E. Cambio, trustees and others versus Commerce Park Realty LLC and others, PM 13-0350, and the receiver for Commerce Park Realty LLC and others versus Commerce Park Management LLC, PB 13-5001, with the town solicitor. May I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Roll call. Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon? 4 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. We are now going into executive session at 8:01.
Nice speech.
All set? Thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn from the executive session at 8:59 PM, please?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a
I'll second it.
second? Thank you. Roll call, Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon? Yes. 4 yeas, no nays. Members of the public, the council met in executive session to consider the following: close pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A1, discussion of job performance, character, physical or mental health of a person or persons, specifically for the council to discuss evaluation of the town manager. The council had a meeting, they had a discussion, no votes were taken. Secondly, closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42465A2, sessions pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation, specifically to discuss the status of the Center of New England receivership matters, captioned as Nicholas E. Campio, trustee and others, versus Commerce Park Realty LLC and others, PM 13-0350, and a receiver for Commerce Park Realty LLC and others versus Commerce Park Management LLC, PB 13-5001, with the town solicitor. A discussion took place, no votes were taken. May I have a motion to seal the minutes of the executive session?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second? Thank you. Roll call, Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon, yes. 4 yeas, no nays. May I have a motion to adjourn the town council meeting at 9 PM?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call, Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon, yes. 4 yeas, no nays. The motion is adjourned at, say, 9 PM. Thank you. See you on Monday. Well, see, Saturday, there is a
Wait,
hearing.
who's coming Saturday?